Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the No ID podcast. We are deep into season 2. I have fellow comedian slash podcast host of the Goodman podcast, fellow comedian Noel Goodman. Say something to the people, brother.
What's up, everybody? I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much. I'm a long-time fan, long-time listener, and glad to call myself a personal friend of Jerome.
Likewise, man, this is a good guy right here. I was actually on his podcast a couple of months ago. Or was it?
Yeah, time flies, but it might have been 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago.
Right. It was me, you, Tim Macklin, and Andrew Malone. Yep. Good man.
We had the Puerto Ricans, we had white people, we had me being Cuban, we had a black man. You had color me bad, right?
So Noel is a comedian, man. Just tell us how you got started into breaking into comedy. What's going on? Share your story.
I appreciate it. I was in the Navy for about 6 years, and whenever we went across the equator, we would have these talent shows, and I would just tell funny stories about people on the ship, and I would entertain. And I didn't even think of it as stand-up comedy. I just, me as well as anybody. I'm a goofy guy. I like people. I enjoy conversation. So I got a lot of laughs, and it's funny that it never clicked for me that stand-up comedy was something that I've always wanted to do. But I'm also a Christian, so I spent a lot of my time talking to people about the faith and talking to people about the world and culture. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me to try to extend that into comedy, but still it never quite clicked for me that stand-up comedy was the thing to do. And when I got out the Navy, I immediately began working at this company, Liebherr, building trucks. And I just started listening to podcasts, Joe Rogan's podcast in particular. And then he started talking about how much fun it was and all the great people that he met doing comedy. And that's when it really began to dawn on me that, these people, these comics, they must be the greatest, the salt of the earth. These must be, funny and intelligent and good people. And I was partly right. Right, I was partly right. And we'll talk later about the stand-up community. But I really began to kind of yearn to maybe try my hand at stand-up and to meet new people and to kind of branch out. And like it was meant to be, I lived near this club right down the street from me called Daddy-O's Tavern. And they had a big sign up one day. I went there to get some pizza. And the sign said, open mic night starting Monday night, or like a month from then. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try to write 10 minutes. And I went up there and I did good. I did all right. And that was about a year and a half ago, almost about 2 years ago. It's crazy with this quarantine, stand-up time is taking like a 6-month, gap. So I wonder, like, do you even count that, when you tell people, have I been doing comedy for 18 months or have I been doing it for 24 months? I don't know if it's fair to say I've been doing it for a full 2 years at this point. But yeah, I've been enjoying it ever since. And I've been discovering so much about myself in comedy and so much about comedy, period. It's been a real self-awakening for me.
It has, like, what I like about your comedy, because I've seen you perform Kazi's, and the Funny Bone, and I've seen a couple of clips, on social media. Your comedy is very relatable.
I appreciate it, man.
I
try to put my family in there and in my experiences, and that's what I'm aiming for. One thing I've learned about comedy, when I first started doing comedy, I think I made the mistake. Like, my first bit I ever wrote was how much I don't like spiders and how much I don't like bugs, and that was funny, but it wasn't really personal. It was just me trying to say something funny about not liking spiders, and then I noticed quickly that a lot of comics, they talked about a lot of gritty stuff. And what's funny about me, I think that's interesting, is that I came up in a kind of a hard life, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not soft by any stretch, but I'm also I don't come off as someone who, for lack of a better word, I don't come off as someone who's from the street, even though I have no problem saying that I'm legitimately. I mean, there was a time that I was out there, struggling and scrambling and hustling just to get by. But now I've become this family man and this devout Christian. So I'm just a big softy now. I'm just a big goofy guy. And so sometimes I see comics that I think they're trying so hard to be so hard. And it's just like, I remember once I was listening to this interview with Sinbad, Sinbad's a clean comic, and he was talking. I forgot who the interview was, but he said something that stuck with me. He said, "Hey, I could be just as gritty and nasty and dirty. I'm darker than any of you comics. I'm a lot." And I was like, "Dang, Sinbad, like, tell her how it is, man." And he's like, "I'm darker than you guys, but I choose. That's not what I want. That's not what I want to be in my comedy. And if you're a dark comic, that's cool." But I started thinking, I don't know if there's a space for me, talking about, you know, bugs and whatever and dinner and my wife cooking, messing up dinner and the silly little jokes that I was getting by in my first 6 months of comedy. But then I realized that I didn't have to choose. There was no either or. I was happy with telling my family stories. I was happy telling my personal stories, and they had both. They had both that realism and that sort of edge that I think is necessary in comedy now, because comedy by nature has an edge to it that I think complements comedy, but it also has that sort of sweet family side comedy that I enjoy telling. So I'm still discovering that process, but I think I'm finally getting there, being able to be personal and have a little bit of bite to it.
It's true, cause like I think comedy has to be relatable, personal. Like when I started off, I've had a lot of bits, and every bit that I've had is a true story. But it was one time I think I broke the mold and decided I was at a this restaurant somewhere on in Virginia Beach, and I went up there and I just talking about turning 30, and I had a joke about me peeing and how I was Steph Curry when I was the pee, and that shit did not fly well with the crowd. It did not
No,
fly well. I was like, and what made it bad thing, my mom was there, my mom's friends, my sister. I brought a bunch, and I just bombed. And I told that joke before at another restaurant or bar, and if it hit, but for whatever reason, didn't hit there. So I don't think I read the crowd right. And then on top of that, I think I was just reaching for something. Like I think a lot of times too. Well, I don't know if it was you, but with me, I will watch other like keep watching different comedians. Different comedians have different styles. You know,
definitely.
and I was watching different comedians. I studied them all the time, and next thing you know, I was going more towards the bathroom humor. I was like, that's not me. I can't sit on and talk about piss and shit all day. My people eating. I don't even want to talk about what I'm eating. So I just bombed.
Yeah.
So that's it. And I know you had a joke, and I laughed. I really did. I thought it was hilarious. Actually, at the Clash of the Comics, and you said it was a dick food or what was it?
Oh yeah. I love that joke. And that was particularly funny about that joke is sometimes it kills at the funny bone. I think I was nervous because it was Clash, and it's something I don't do often with the competition aspect of it. And something I've really learned even since then. That was almost right before the shutdown. That was like in late February. And something I've learned is that I'm a lot funnier when I just let go and when I just let myself, the same way me and you having this conversation now, being free, being comfortable. And something I think I messed up in comedy before this quarantine was perhaps being too reserved. And by nature, I'm not a reserved person. By nature, I'm definitely more outgoing. And I need to be honest to myself in my comedy. And so I think you'll see when you see me again on stage, hopefully next time, is a much more relaxed, much more easygoing Noel. But I love that joke in particular because I had a vasectomy, which was a traumatic experience for any man. And yeah, I just talked about my kids and my wife. She was like, "Hey, after that third kid, she wouldn't let me get no booty at all." And she was just like, "Hey," and I talk about how she learned dick fu. I try to get in there and she's slapping the dick away, and I do this little kung fu bit, and and I have to kick and whatnot. And I used to be real deep into martial arts when I was growing up, and I would compete and do tournaments and whatnot. So I wanted to incorporate that in my comedy. Another thing I hope to do with my comedy is talk more about, me personally. I love talking about culture. I love talking about politics. It's something that we discuss often on TGM, on the Goodman podcast. And I wanted to bring that into my comedy as well. And I think at first I was scared to because I spend a lot of time studying politics, studying culture, studying philosophy and sociology. And I didn't want to sound pretentious. And I didn't want to get on stage But then I got to thinking, well, who do I want to be 5 years from now as a comic? If I were just a person talking about Noel Goodman, saying who is he as a comic, I would like, hopefully, for people to say, man, Noel, he's a Christian, but he's not rubbing my face in it. I like what he talks about because it's talking about current issues, but it's funny in an interesting way. Hopefully, they get a feel for my personality. And then the question is, what other comics out there are doing what I aspire to do? I think of people like a Bill Maher, in a sense. He's a little bit more political than I want to be, but maybe somewhere between someone like a Tosh Point oh. He focuses entirely on the internet, of course, but Bill Maher focuses entirely on politics. But if I can find a sort of medium ground between the sort of social commentary of a Tosh, Daniel Tosh, but also the political commentary of a Bill Maher, I think I would have found my particular sweet spot. I would have found something good for me.
Yeah, D.L. Hughley is the king of that.
Yes, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. I should have mentioned him. D.L. Hughley, that's a perfect example.
King of it. Bro, like we had Clear. You check out Contrarian. If you listen to his the GED report, he is the king of finding that medium between like internet and politics. Another one is Ali Sadiq. For those that don't know, that's Mexican guy on boots.
Yes, I got to get on him, man. I tell you, I hate to say that I've been sleeping on Ali. He constantly pops up on my feed. All Things Comedy shares his a lot, and Comedy Central shares his a lot. I think he even hits the Funny Bone out here in Richmond from time to time. I remember maybe one day we can get together for a show, man. Next time that Ali comes into town, I would love for us to get together, man. Go out there and check out a show. That'd be dope.
I'm down. I'm down 1,000%.
For sure, man. That'd be really cool.
I'm down. So earlier, the conversation that we was having earlier, I want to go back to your podcast, the Goodman podcast, right?
Okay.
Right. We had this conversation up here about your creative integrity and your legacy.
Yes. I thought about that podcast. Have you found yourself thinking about it from time to time? I find myself going back to it because we touched on some, I don't want to say controversial, but some touchy subjects and I know that a lot of comics from the area listen to it. And I think some people did not like what we had to say because we tend to say that look, I mean, we might as well sum it up. I think essentially what we had talked about was say what you want, but realize there's repercussions, there's consequences to what you say. And ultimately, comedy is not the highest standard. Sometimes I think comics say, I can be as offensive as I want, I can put down whatever I want. And I believe in free speech as much as anyone. But at the same time, when they get called out on it and they say, well, you're just killing comedy, it's like, no, what you said was genuinely, I hate to use the word wrong or offensive, but there was something to it that was so egregious that it went beyond the realm of comedy. And I think sometimes people do that, and here's the thing, I'm a Christian. I've heard comics talk about my Lord and Savior in the most reprehensible ways. And I'm like, look, that's fine. I'm not, our relationship doesn't change, but at the same time, I think that people find it easy to talk about Christianity. Will they do the same thing for, Allah? Will they do the same thing for, I think sometimes they choose an easy target. And I think the one we had brought up was Kobe. At the time, Ari Shaffir had basically called, Obi a racist, and he wasn't even trying to be funny. And something that I didn't get a chance to talk about in that podcast that I thought about later was sometimes if you're really funny and you're very clever when you say the joke, even if it's deeply offensive in a sense, people will respect you because you were so clever about it. That's almost like you're showing respect to the person. That cleverness, that the fact that you took the time to say something really, really intelligent, people will say, you know what, that joke was wrong, but it clearly, you almost gave it a respect, almost gave it a little bit of honor by wrapping it up in that intelligence. But if you just say something vulgar and it's low-hanging fruit and you're just being ugly and you're just being an ass, then don't be surprised when people call you out about it and be like, dude, not only was it not funny, but it was offensive, it was wrong, and you're gonna have to pay some sort of, especially because ultimately comedy, we're selling something to the people. We're selling this comedy, right? And if people don't want it because you're selling raw fruit, you're selling rancid product, then don't run to the cover of, oh, I'm just a free speech advocate, or I'm just I'm just fighting for comedy, when what you're really fighting for is to be a dick. So that's what we talked about on the last podcast, on the last teacher. That's essentially what we talked about. That's
essentially
essentially
what we talked about. Like I told you, when it comes to your creative integrity and leaving your legacy, I want y'all really sit down and think about this, right? I have a Twitter account and I rarely post on Twitter. I'm just learning how to work Twitter. It seems like every day somebody is trending from either a comedy background. I know they had the guy Jake Paul, he was trending. Logan, Jake, whatever, Logan Paul, Jake, Logan's one of them. I don't know. They're trending for something they did 6-7 years ago. It was a Willow Smith controversy up there when the guy said that Willow Smith was cute and she was like 12 years old or whatever, and it was trending. And I'm saying to myself, they did this as jokes, right? They did this for a laugh, but now it's coming back 6-7 years later to hurt them. And if you're a man or woman enough to say that bullshit on the mic in front of everybody, own it.
Own it. You're exactly right.
Live up to it.
Exactly right.
Don't one day, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a comedian that's gonna make a joke about it. Don't go on there and joke about Black Lives Matter, but then be at the Black Lives Matter protest. Don't joke about stuff like that. Okay. Hey, own your shit. Back it up. Yeah. Noel, he has jokes about his family all the time. I met his family. His family's pretty dope. I enjoy being over there. And all his jokes was pretty much the same thing that he says. My family, same jokes. I have a joke: turn the Wi-Fi on, turn the Wi-Fi off. It's true. I turned it off. I turned it back on. My parents think I'm a damn genius, but turning it back on and off. It really is true. I did go to school and flunked out of TCC and got an IT to get an IT degree. Ended up going to ECPI and graduated with a business degree and still majored in IT. But it's all relatable and realm. Just on your shit. You have a legacy. If I can go back in time, I can watch Eddie Murphy's stand up. I can watch Red Fox stand up and consistently keep watching those on and on and on again. But there's some comedians that I'll probably watch one stand up special and I'm like, damn, this you can like tell they're not gonna leave that legacy. It's just like music. There's music that's out now, these little pumps, these little drill deals, whatever the hell they call themselves. 10, 20 years down the line, they're probably gonna be strung out, broke, probably on a reality television show where you have the classes like the Air B's, the Rakims, the Public Enemies, the Jay-Z's. Their music is still going on. And I think like comedians, we have jokes that continuously going on.
You're exactly right. I love that point because I think about what kind of comic you want to be. And if you want to be the sort of comic that only basically does open mics or local mics around here, then by all means, just talk whatever nonsense you want to talk. But if you hope or you aspire to have a voice in the culture, if you want to be the kind of comic that one day, they're listening to in New York or they're listening to in LA, and if you want to be the kind of comic, I aspire to be the sort of comic who hopefully 6 months from now, if I have a great joke, I have a joke that I'm proud of, and I need to polish it up. This is an early joke, but it's a political joke, and I just talk about Russia. And I talk about how, Russia and Facebook, everyone's protesting Facebook on Facebook, hooked on social media, we're trying to protest social media. And then I talk about Russia in the mix. I even throw Kanye in there. And it's a funny little joke, but I like it because I told it like, it was one of my first jokes. I was actually at Daddy-O's Tavern. It was one of my first bits, but it's still relevant today. It's relevant right now because right back in the mix, we're talking about Kanye now, we're talking about Russia, and people are now protesting Facebook again. So if you write a really good joke, 18 months later, that joke is going to be relevant, it's going to be powerful, it's going to be funny, and that's what's so great about writing a great joke. But if your joke is basically, pedophilia and the thing is, the grittiest most offensive jokes only have a shelf life of about not that long. I mean, what, 6 months, a year? I mean, Eddie Murphy, and I love Eddie Murphy. Got him on my wall. He's one of my favorite people in the world. But when you look at like some of Delirious or Raw, a lot of it doesn't hit now because it was really offensive and like, wow, I can't believe he went there in 1989. But now everyone goes there. Justin Bieber goes there, you know. So a lot of the jokes that were so edgy, 15 years ago aren't edgy anymore. But there's some comics who I think, you look at Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor's got this great bit where he's boxing at the gym, and he's like, the dude hitting himself. He's like, poof, poof, poof. He's like, how am I gonna beat him up? He's hitting himself. He's beating himself up. What am I gonna do? And it's a great bit. It's 35 years old, and it's just as funny now as it's ever been. So that's the quality of a great bit, and that's the power of great comedy. And you have to decide, well, what kind of comic are you gonna be? What kind of person are you gonna be?
True. And we all are either have someone that looks up to us or someone that we look up to, whether it's in the comedy or it's in the personal aspect or professional aspect. So think about your mentors and those that you're mentoring, your peers. Think about them. Like, do you think that they want to hear that shit?
Yeah.
Later on down the line. Like, do you like if I go out on the stage and joke about pedophilia, my mother and father are at 70% of my shows.
Hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, after a show, if I feel like I killed it, if there's a cute girl in the audience, I'm definitely trying to hit on her. I can't hit on her after I joke about that type of shit. Like come on now.
Man, no one snatched you up yet. You still single, man? What's going on, man? People need to snatch you up.
I am still single. But if you guys listen to the episode before this one on the podcast, we talked about dating. So, and that too, because I want to say this too. I listen to the Goodman podcast. I subscribe to it on Apple Podcasts.
Absolutely.
I listen to it.
I can say one of my favorites you did was with Lionel Harris. That was really good. He's a good guy, man. I like him a lot. And Travis Bacon. That was a real fun episode as well.
Yeah, man. But my climate has changed a little bit on the podcast, maybe because what's going on. But yours with Earl, Earl was pretty good. Of course, my personal favorite in the podcast.
He's a good guy.
That was on. So, you're just gonna throw it.
We talked about the quarantine, and now with the quarantine, everything is changing, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do to keep, creative. And I think right now, as comics, you and I, this podcast is creative, and I'm actually working on a project right now. Might as well give you the exclusive. I got a song I'm working on, a funny sort of SNL style song, and I already finished the song. It's hype. I'm gonna make a video for it and hopefully drop it. I don't know, Tuesday, Wednesday. It takes how long I can edit it, but that's about staying creative during this quarantine. And so yeah, we have to find ways to keep funny, and whether that's making videos or whether that's whatever you can do to keep your name, to keeping the flow. Are you doing what are you have you been able to have any projects or?
Honestly, I've wrote new jokes, but I've been going so hard on this podcast.
Absolutely.
For anybody that follows me or does not follow me, you will 9 times out of 10 on the podcast, on my any social media, will see something on the podcast. And for anybody that follows my mother, y'all think she's tagged me. I'm actually taking her phone and posting from her social media to do it. Or if I can grab a coworker's phone, they let me post something. Yeah, that's me. I'm constantly promoting it. So the podcast is what I feel like I can go more into right now with this quarantine. I feel like this is what's keeping us creatives sane, is something, because you got Goodman podcast, you got your stand up, you got a song coming out. So
yeah, so I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it. If it comes out Tuesday. If it comes out Tuesday, I know this podcast drops every Tuesday, so you'll be out this Tuesday. So
what's up, man? The stars are aligning. Stars are aligning, man. Yeah, I like to draw. Sometimes I'll do little comics. I think it's important, and something me and Earl talked about on the quarantine episode was, there's so many ways of being funny, and you can use all of your talents, and whether that's making a comic strip, or doing, the videos. I really appreciate, friends that we have, people like, Ajante, or people like Kimberly that do their little videos, and people like Andrew Pabone, who does his Christian-based videos. And so it's important to try to find where your lane is at. And for some people, I think this podcast is the best way to get information, to learn about people. I've learned so much about you through your podcast, and I know people learn about me through TGM. So I think that being creative is the greatest gift you can give yourself, man. I really do.
It is. I learned a lot about you through your social media, through the pictures that you post in your comedy. As weird as it sounds, I follow you both. I like what you post, number one.
I
I
appreciate it,
think
man. It is personal for me.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I know I saw the rap one time, stand up, and then I listened to like the clips of the Goodman podcast. I'm like, damn, dude is really spitting some kind of knowledge. So I personally am a fan of the Noel Goodman brand.
Thank you,
I'm
good man.
personally a fan of the
Wow.
Goodman podcast.
That means a lot, man. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. My social media is personal for me, and everybody uses it differently. Some people just all they do is post nonsense. Some people share memes all day, and that's cool. I love my meme sharers. They get me through my day. I've got friends that all they do is share memes 24/7, and I love those people. But for me, social media is sort of almost like art. I mean, it's like I get a chance to show a thought on something, and then the next day I'll be like, you know what, I haven't talked about, God for a while. I'll purposely think tomorrow I'm going to say a reflection on my Lord, and I'll write something like that, and then I'll purposely be like, we were talking about before this podcast started, you were in my thoughts a couple weeks ago, and I said, I really appreciate Jerome, and I want to write something that talks about, his comedy, and I put together a little post about my thoughts on your comedy, a sort of a local comic review, and that was purpose, that was intentful. And I've had people mad at me before because they told me like, hey man, I got like 6-7 shows and you're not promoting it on your page, and I thought we were cool, why don't you promote it on your page? And I have to tell them like, look, I'll promote you here and there. I got no problem putting your show on blast, using my social media. But at the same time, it's like, you have to understand that I'm very intentful by like what I want to do today, what my focus is on today. And also I have this idea that we know all the same people. Like we got all the same friends. So if you've got a comedy show at, Joe Blow's, barbecue grill, the same people who I know, are going to go. And furthermore, and I don't want to sound dismissive when I say this, but I've never had a friend ask me, hey, Noel, do you know any comedy shows that you're not at, that you're not going to be part of? Like, none of my friends want to go to a comedy show where I'm not performing. So if I'm like, hey, my friend, Nathaniel, JoJo is having a crazy good show at the barbecue grill, but I'm not going to be there, I can promise you 100% of my friends aren't going to go to your show. And that's just how petty my friends are. That's just how shiesty my people are. But that's just the way it is. People have been upset with me for that because you see it, and you probably know this as well as anyone. There's a lot of within the comic community, like scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, put me on your show, I'll put you on my show, share my stuff, I'll share your stuff. And I've had people basically, defriend me because maybe they thought I wasn't being more active within the community. But that's not intentful. Like I support all of you. I promise you this, if you were to succeed tomorrow, if you were to get a comedy, you, Jerome, or any comic were to get on Comedy Central tomorrow, I promise you that a lot of your so-called friends would not be happy that you got that 15-minute spot on Comedy Central. A lot of your so-called friends would not be happy that you got that money tomorrow. I would be happy for you, man. I would be happy for you 100% because I don't have any hate for anyone's success. But a lot of your so-called friends, they do not want you to succeed, really. And you'll see that there's a reverse side of that too, that once you start succeeding, you're going to see a lot of people come out the woodwork. Once you get a little bit of shine, you're going to see a lot of moths come to the light, and you're going to see a lot of people kind of come out and be like, oh, what's up, because now they want to be your friend, now that you got a little glory to you.
That's true. I'll share anything. If you say wrong, can you share something? But I expect the same in return. That's just me.
Word.
But if you don't ask me and I share, I don't want anything in return. Like, I've shared the Goodman podcast a couple of times, and number two, I do appreciate the post the write up that you did. I actually still have it saved as a favorite in my iPhone.
I appreciate it, man. That's what's up. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I'm not good with the write ups. What I do is I just want to put you on the podcast. I tell you anybody, I want to put you on the podcast. Like I want you to share your story. So, you know, in this comedy business, it is a little. I think it's a little. It's an eye opener. I love it. But it's just like any job, a 9 to 5. There are
Absolutely.
politics. It's politics. There's a lot of politics into it. Like outside of the politics, I have a lot of fun. I've made a lot of friends. I'm gonna say 98% of my friends are comedians, or podcast hosts, or actors. So I love it. I can't get enough of it. And this quarantine sucks because I can't see them like I used to. I can't.
Yeah.
Funny Bone, open mics, Clash of the Commons. I can't see them. Kazi's.
Well, the premise of your podcast, the idea that you have is this: people, we all work and we all have lives and we're doing 9 to 5, but at the same time, we're out there pursuing our dreams. And that's always what I've taken from No ID is this, we're out there hustling and I got kids I have to feed and a wife I have to take care of and a career I have to pursue because I don't know if this comedy is going to work out. I could do this for 10 years and then be like, well, that was great. But now I'm going to have to focus on something else or whatever. I mean, who knows? But that's fine because comedy is so rewarding in the sense that just being on stage, getting over my demons, discovering myself, my ability to talk to people, making these connections and new friendships. I mean, that is dope in and of itself. So even if this comedy don't pan out like I hope it does, I'm always going to benefit from being a comic. It's always going to be a plus in my corner. But yeah, with No ID, it is a struggle trying to work, career, church, family, go to the club, come back at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight, wake up at 4:30, and then God, it's a grind, man. It's a real grind, but you got to do it.
You know how many times I've been at work and I've taken a lunch break and actually fell asleep in the break room because I open mic.
Just got that.
You know how many times I've done that? I'm like knocked out, or the most rewarding one I've ever had, and this is true. I did an open mic one time. I forgot where, and I come to work the next day tired, and this couple comes into the job, and they say, "You look familiar," and
okay.
I'm like, okay, where have you seen me at? And they go, you were at Southern Flair and we found your comedy hilarious. But you working here? I was like, yeah, I gotta work a 9 to 5. And I was like, they were like talking to me about it and everything. I'm like, yeah, I was trying to keep it on the wraps. And I guess word was getting out. And yeah. It was actually, I was like, oh, okay, that's a little rewarding. Like your family and your close friends and everything, that's cool. They see it all the time. But for a random stranger to like just say, yeah, you're funny. That's like a reward,
It is a reward. Absolutely, man. Yeah, reaching out to people and doing what you do is definitely makes it all worth it. And it's always fun when you get recognized around town. And I live in a small, well, Williamsburg is kind of small, but yeah, I've had the pleasure because I run the Daddy-O's Tavern mic that yeah, occasionally you meet someone that recognizes you. And you get that little touch, little pepper of fame there, a little bit, which is nice. I really do hope that when comedy picks back up, that I can begin branching out. I can begin maybe driving out to DC, maybe taking a trip out to New York. Maybe if not this winter, maybe next winter. Winter is always good for me because I have like a good month vacation I can take, during the Christmas break. Stay out that way. So I got some plans for the future, man. It's just a matter of continuing finding my comedic voice because I've only been doing this for about 2 years. Continuing writing, getting better at this. It's one of those things that people say it takes 10 years to get really, really good at comedy, and that's true, man. And so I'm encouraged that at 2 years I'm happy where I'm at. I'm proud of myself with what I'm doing, especially because I am juggling all these things. Like there are a lot of comics I kind of envy them sometimes that they basically just work and do comedy, work and do comedy, you know, and they and so there is that sort of envy in a sense where it's like, man, I wish I could stay out till midnight, 1 to 2 in the morning doing not wake up till 10 o'clock, you know, 11 and get back out there on the clubs. But of course, you know, they have their own struggles, and everybody has their own struggles. So definitely, if I can continue balancing the comedy and the life and the writing and the podcast and all the projects, sometimes I wonder if it's too much. Sometimes I wonder, man, am I taking on too much trying to do 7 different things, you know? But it enriches me. It makes me feel enriched. So I don't know yet. I haven't figured that out if I should take a step back from certain things in order to focus on other things.
I get an enrichment. I get an enrichment feeling. I get a sense of like accomplishment. I'm like, damn, I went from getting out the house in 1 to 2 nights out of the month to
Mm.
getting out 4 or 5 times out of the night and networking and movement. And I get a whole feeling of it. And I know for a fact if I personally was to stop doing comedy, or if I was just to say, you know what, I'm done with the podcast, I don't think that I could do it. I don't really think I could do it because in the back of my mind, I would have that shoulda, woulda, coulda. Like, well, I should have done this. I could have done this. I would have done this. I don't want to have. I don't have any regrets at all. But I just couldn't stop. And I enjoy, even though I fall asleep on my lunch breaks when I was doing the comedy shows, even though I've fallen asleep on my lunch break or in at work in midday from being tired from doing an open mic,
It's
I
worth it.
I love it. I genuinely love it. I'm not saying I'm addicted to it, but I love it. I enjoy it.
Pretty fun.
You know, because
Absolutely.
with I don't know if you get this, but I know I get this a lot. I do not look like a comedian. I look like either A, I can fix your computer, or B, I can fix your cell phone. I do not. I look like I work straight from IT. I'm straight
Oh
geek.
my word. Is that a bit? Are you doing bits of me now on the podcast? No, you really do. You really do. I expect you to wear a geek squad, a little pocket protector. No, but yeah, you're definitely a comic, man. You're definitely a comic, man. That's funny, man. You know, I feel so blessed to have a family that supports me, have a wife that's like, go out there and do it, baby, go out there and do comedy. And I feel so fortunate that my kids see me doing this and they like, yeah, dad chasing his dreams. And I want them to know like you can chase your dreams too. I'm always gonna support you. You want to be a violinist? I got your back 100%. You be a violinist, you know? You want to be my little Bethany, my little daughter, you want to be a dancer? I support you. You know, we're gonna wear. If you don't, and I love it that we're on the same page. Where it's like, even if you don't succeed, you're gonna benefit from this. Like, who cares if you succeed or not? The fact that you went out there and you lived this is such a benefit. You know, so they know their dad supports them. They know that the dad's out there, you know, grinding and hustling to try to make his dreams come true. And that's, man, that's the essence of your podcast, man. It's a real pleasure to talk to you about these things. It really is.
No, it's a pleasure to have you up here. I know it's been a while, man, but for those that do podcasting and stuff like that, I've learned to at least record 2 to 3 episodes in advance and just let them, post date them for stuff and stuff that's gonna happen. But I'm glad I finally got you up here. And this is season 2. I want to. This is true story. When I first started podcasting, um, I started off on a different hosting site, and I'm like, damn, this hosting site sucks. And I kept seeing Noel posting different things up through his hosting site, our same hosting site I use now, which is Buzzsprout.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I looked at his structure, right? I looked at the name of his podcast, the Goodman Podcast. That's a play on his name, but it's a Goodman podcast. It's general topics. It's politics, it's comedy, it's life, it's family. It's a lot of topics that is actually discussed on this podcast. I was like, okay, well, his name hasn't limited him to what he can talk about, and it's a play on his name, Goodman.
Yeah.
Last name Goodman, but you can all say he's a good man. So I picked that up. And I was like, all right, well, I can't say Jerome this, can't say this name. I came up with a name, No ID. No Idea, of course, sharing people's stories, journeys, whether it's comedy, dating, politics, whatever. I could talk about anything. And Noel Goodman talks about anything on that podcast. So if you have not listened to it, subscribe. It's the Goodman Podcast, available everywhere.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Follow
Absolutely.
him everywhere. This is a good guy. I'm telling you. I met him at the ASAP show.
Yes. Great show.
Great
Good time.
show. And that was my first time getting on with ASAP. I haven't been getting on to him. I did actually sign up for their boot camp before the pandemic. I haven't heard anything back from them. My father was military, warrant officer in the
Yes.
Navy, and I was like, I got to get on. And yeah, I went there with Noel. I met
Conversation with
Noel
you,
there.
right? We just struck up a conversation. This is like, what's up, man? Next thing you know, we were like 30 minutes into just kind of talking and just talking, right? I was wow. I was like, this is a cool cat, man. And that night, I looked you up on Facebook, and yeah, it's funny when you meet people like that where you just kind of it doesn't really take a lot of work, and that feels good when you don't have to really put in effort to like somebody. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I enjoy talking comedy. If anybody wants to talk to me about comedy, please, please. That's all I watch. I'm probably
Mhm.
actually once this is my day consists of me watching stand-up specials and podcasts. So
Yeah,
that's it. So Noel, before we sign off, right?
yes, sir.
Where can the people follow you at?
Hey, before I go, I just want to let everybody know. Thank you so much for listening. When Jerome was on the podcast with the episode on comedy that we were talking about earlier, I noticed the numbers went up really high. And there was a lot of your fans that were tuning in. I was like, oh man, Jerome, he's bringing in, I got the bump. I got the Davis bump. What's going on here? I got the No ID bump coming in my crowd. So I imagine that some of you have probably might have heard me before, and you can see the analytics when you're podcasting, so you can tell like, okay, I'm getting an audience here, I'm getting an audience there, and that's a lot of fun. So yeah, if you want to see how I progress and you want to see where we go from here, I'm sure we're going to do this again. This is not going to be a one-time off. We're just getting started, to tell you the truth. But please look me up on Facebook. My name is Noel David Goodman. I have a new IG, just Noel David Goodman. Keep it simple, of course, the Goodman Podcast. And you look me up on Facebook if you like. I'm more than open to have a conversation. Like I said, I talk a lot about culture. I'm a Christian. I spend a lot of time talking to my atheist friends about the reliability of the scriptures, the scriptural truths, the philosophical truths, the cultural and historical truths of the scripture, which is something that's really near and dear to me, near and dear to my heart, something that I've spent a lot of years studying, how to talk about the Bible in an analytic, in a philosophical, in a scientific way. So if you ever want to have that conversation, I'm more than happy to sit down and we can talk science and we can talk history. And yeah, and I'm just really happy to be here, man. It's been a great day, and God bless you, brother. You're a good friend, and I really appreciate you doing what you do, man.
Appreciate it. If you guys want to follow me, you can follow me on IG at Comedian Rome. That's my comedian profile. You can also follow me at No ID Podcast. You on Instagram, Twitter, Comedian Rome, YouTube, Comedian Rome. If you would like to shout me out on Cameo, well, pay me to shout you out on Cameo. I do that as well too. Facebook, Jerome Davis. Um, what else? I got a bunch of shit. Uh, I told Noel this one. Said this on the last podcast. I will be getting featured on topblackpodcast.org.
That's right.
I submitted the application in. I got the approval. I just sent them in the artwork. We do have merchandise coming out pretty soon. Um,
That's what's up.
so, I always do this too. I haven't done it in a while. Top 5 comedians dead or alive, any order, with a starting 6 men.
Ah, man. All right. Well, so we'll start 6 and work our way up to 1.
That's fine.
All right. So if I had to start at the bottom, uh, Eddie Murphy. I love him. He's on my list. He's on the bottom of that list because I think as far as the stand-up's concerned, it's not as good as much of as I appreciate what he's done with the movies, what he's done with Beverly Hills Cop. what he's done with Coming to America. I mean, I could go off of what he's done with Boomerang, what he's done with Vampire in Brooklyn. So I could just run down the list of the great Eddie Murphy movies' life. But what he's contributed to comedy within his movies, which he writes and produces, and he definitely has. But his stand-up as well is great. But as far as stand-up comedy, he's on the bottom of that prestigious list. And then after that, I guess we talked about Richard Pryor earlier. Actually, I got to put Richard Pryor number 2 or 1 though. I really like. He's a new comic. His name is Ronnie Chang. He had his special just recently on Netflix. He's a Chinese man. What I like about his comedy is that he taught me something interesting about comedy. Was find out what you do and do whether it's 1 or 2 things that you do well and do those things very well. And I think when I started off comedy, I basically was trying to maybe be all things to all people, and that was not a good tact. And when I was watching Ronnie Chang, which he plays a sort of angry Chinese man, and it's almost a shtick, but he does it so well. And I was watching thinking like he does that one thing to perfection. And it's so well done. It's almost like this famous Bruce Lee quote, like, I'm not afraid of the man who can do 10,000 moves. I'm afraid of the man who's done 10,000 kicks, on one kick 10,000 times. And it's the same principle that Bruce is talking about, that you find that 1 or 2 things that you can do really well and you perfect it. And if that thing is maybe the way you say a line, or maybe it's a look that you can give that's really, really good, or maybe it's a way you can drop a certain punchline, or whatever it is, you find out what that one thing is and you nail it. So Ronnie Chang, he's really funny as well. Third, John Mulaney. He's just real funny. I like his sort of, there's probably no person who I'm more opposite with than John Mulaney, as far as, because he's like this really white bread, well-to-do, grew up upper middle class, white boy. I think he's Catholic, or he was raised real strict Catholic. I mean, he's everything I wasn't growing up, and even his comedy's not like mine. But I appreciate his comedy so much. Kid Gorgeous and the Comeback Kid and whatnot. And I really admire him for the way he's able to deliver jokes about anything and make it hilarious. I mean, he could talk about sitting in a chair and make it really funny. I study him and I think like wow, he's great. And now the last 2, and this is where it gets tough for me. I'm actually going to put Richard Pryor at number 2, which I was thinking about putting at number 1. Richard's great, man. If you guys, I know he's an older comic. If you're a young buck, and when I was a kid, I used to listen to Richard on my cassette tapes. Give away my age a little bit, man. I would listen to his cassette. Him and Eddie, because if you grew up in the '80s, listening to Delirious and Eddie Murphy Raw was amazing. But Richard, he's so brilliant. Like I talked about in the podcast earlier, he does bits, about boxing, about fighting, about anything. I mean, it's not about pooping. That's still funny today, and he's a genius. And number 1 has to go to Chappelle, man. How could it not? How could it not go to Dave Chappelle? We talked about cultural comics earlier, and what cultural comic is better than Dave Chappelle? He did his special recently. I don't even know if I should call it a special. And it was about the name's failing, about Davis. I'm sorry, what's his name? What's his name?
George Floyd.
George Floyd. I'm sorry, I'm talking on a rant. And he wasn't even trying to be funny, but I was glued to the screen. And I watched that and I thought, is there any other comic in the world who could talk to you about something so serious, so controversial, and keep you entertained? Is there any other comic in the world who can talk to you with 1 or 2 jokes in, what was it, about 30 minutes? Was it like a half hour? Who could talk to you for over a half hour and only have and keep you glued to I watched it twice, and keep you glued to the screen. And when I was breaking it down mentally, I was thinking, you know what it is? It's his authenticity. And I think it's also the fact that he's so natural and engaging, and the fact that he's telling truth. It kind of goes, it's a great way to wrap up this podcast, because we talk about legacy, we talk about integrity. And I think that's what makes it so interesting for everyone who watched, is that he's coming at it with, I mean, there's no other word, authenticity, integrity, and that captivates you. And it was entertaining. I mean, it's legitimately entertaining. I don't know any other comic that can do that besides Dave Chappelle. So yeah, I'll finish off my big glass of wine here. To No ID, to Dave, and to you, brother. God bless you, man.
Thank you, Bear. Hey, thank y'all so much, man, for listening in. This episode, every episode comes out every Tuesday. We are season 2. This is episode 9. I appreciate you, Noel, coming up here, brother. You're a good man. I appreciate you and your hospitality when I was up there doing your podcast for you, man. It's been a pleasure. You're a great dude, brother.
My man, you too. Thank you, man.
Stay positive, man.